Hi. Good. Good morning. Uh, you know, you've heard some bits about me. I'd love to learn a little more about you. So, show of hands, okay? How many people in the audience who have an engineering degree? Okay, good. How many people with a degree in... This also works? Yeah, okay. How many people with a degree in management? Feedback. All right. So how many people with a degree in management? Okay. How many people with a degree in the arts? Good. I'm glad to see a few. I wish there were more. Okay. Anyone with a law background? Good. Finance? Okay, one. And also finance? Yes. And medicine? Good. Okay. I'm glad that we have fairly diverse representation here. All right? Okay, so now the next thing. Sorry, the most of this talk I'm going to speak in English, but I'm fairly fluent in Malayalam and I understand very well and I speak well, as we speak, read and write. So when it comes to Q&A or any of that sort, it's welcome. All right, as we start, I have a request. Reach out with your right hand, okay, palm facing upwards. Right? And now close your eyes. Close your eyes, huh? No peeking. Okay. So what could you place in that palm? A bunch of keys, your wallet, an apple. Now open your eyes. That's a premature baby you see right there. Right? This baby seems to be sleeping peacefully, but in reality, she's actually struggling for her life. Okay. So this is normal room temperature. You and I are quite comfortable. This is roughly 25 degrees Celsius. Okay. Now imagine being flung into a pool of ice cold water. Okay. Imagine being flung into a pool of ice cold. That's the thermal shock that this baby feels in this environment. Okay. I was introduced as a co-founder of Embrace. Okay. Helping babies like this was Embrace's mission. So I'll start by giving a little bit about what Embrace does or managed to do before moving on to the AI piece. Okay. So this was the problem we set out to solve. There's about 3 million babies, there's about 15 million of these babies born world over every year. 3 million of them die in the first year of life, and that's roughly 6 babies per minute. The most common solution, or rather the recommended solution, I shouldn't say most common solution, is something called an incubator. Many of you may have seen this. You'll find this in hospitals. They're essentially glass boxes that plug in and keep babies warm. Okay? Unfortunately, in most parts of the world, you don't have access to these because they need continuous electricity, they need trained personnel to use them, okay? And they're expensive, and once they break down, there's no spare part. I've personally seen donated incubators being used as file cabinets. Okay? They make sort of good file cabinets because you can push them around, they're kind of airtight, insects don't get in. And why is that? Because of these reasons. No training, no power, no spare parts. I give this example only to suggest that sometimes low cost is not always a solution. Here's a device that came absolutely free, okay, but still doesn't solve the problem. Okay? So in many situations, and we will see this also in the AI case, you have to solve problems in a manner that's appropriate for the situation. Cost alone won't always cut it. These are other common solutions. We'll see light bulbs, space heaters. I'll skip on to what we came up with, which is the Embrace Infant Warmer. It has 3 parts, and the secret sauce is that white thing that you see there. It uses what's called a phase change material. It's essentially high school physics. Okay? It's an ice that melts at 37 degrees Celsius and therefore has the ability to store heat, okay, at human body temperature, and releases it as the baby needs. Okay? Latent heat, phase transition. Orma varunnunno? from high school physics, right? So that's the essential principle. You can heat it with electricity, or if you don't have electricity, you can heat it with hot water. Okay? And that was the innovation. And this is Kirti. She's from a village called Naganahalli in HD Kote Taluk in Karnataka. When her baby, she lost her first baby. Baby again was born low birth weight. She lost her first baby because she went to her mother's house and for delivery, and there weren't adequate healthcare facilities to handle the delivery. So when she got pregnant with a second child, her husband said, "Don't go to your mother's place, stay here," and he faced social stigma for this. Okay? But they had a decent hospital in their vicinity. Okay? It was a charitable hospital, and that's where she gave birth. And again, unfortunately, the baby was low birth weight. When thankfully the embrace warmer had been supplied to that place, and the baby was in the warmer for about 2 weeks or so. And baby is doing well now. I'll show you a little about, we went through lots of, so this came out of Stanford University, lots of iterations. And long story short, we've now, we launched in 2012, and we have now reached about 250,000 babies, actually more than 250,000 babies in over 25 countries. Okay? Last year, we've raised about, we raised a Series A, Series B, and last year we closed our Series C round of venture financing. These devices are certified to, they meet global regulatory norms, and so they're certified to actually be sold in Europe. They meet that sort of quality requirement. And last year, the WHO procured them for helping babies of Syrian refugees in refugee camps in Jordan. Okay? Okay. So I'll pause there on the embrace bit. That was just to share that I have a few lashes on my back. Okay. Now, I don't think it was necessarily mentioned, but I have a bit of a background in AI because I got myself along the way, I got myself a PhD, and that was back at Stanford, was at the interface of AI and physics. Okay? I wanted to sort of try and make a difference. Embrace happened, and for my next thing, I'm looking at using AI to do some interesting things. That'll be the MIT gig. So I'll try and give you a very brief intro into some possibilities of AI and how you might think about it, right? I apologize if this will sound too watered down because I did not want to get too technical. Okay? I'm happy to take technical questions as well, and we can get into as much depth as needed as we get into the Q&A. But I suspect I'll need the slides for getting anywhere. Do you need me to do anything here? No? Kramer's on. Sorry, Kramer always reminds me of Seinfeld. We're back. All right. So, there are many, AI is a big field. Okay. It's also, AI is a big field. AI is also a field a term that is used very loosely. Okay. Don't believe everything you hear. Okay. It's also become fashionable to use the term. I would say, there's many subfields of AI, but broadly you can look at them as doing three kinds of things. Okay. Solving three kinds of problems. One is problems that are classification problems. Okay. That's a classic example is image recognition. Okay. Sorry, I need the. Okay. Why don't we do this? Why don't we pause for a second, and let's make sure that tech issues are handled. And worst case, I'll try and do this without slides. Right? Next such interruption we'll use for Q&A. There we go. So here's what I'll do. Let's use this time for, if you have any questions popping up, I'll be happy to take questions. Yes, good. So the question is, how did I end up developing a medical device? What part of it would you like to know? The personal journey, Developing technology. Okay.
Like, why did you choose to develop? Because I am a doctor myself.
Okay.
That is why the curiosity.
All right. Okay.
You being a non-medical person, what
Yeah.
was the inspiration and what was the process? I mean, did you have support from the medical side also?
Okay. Yeah. So let me sequence the answer. First of all, you will see that if you look at medical device companies worldwide, okay, the vast majority of the development is actually done by engineers, right? With now the original idea may come from practitioners for identifying the need, okay? But usually the development work is done by engineers, right? So you shouldn't be surprised that engineers develop medical devices. That's actually the norm. Okay? In fact, doctors developing medical devices is unusual. Okay? Now, how did we go about it? Let me put it this way. We had access to lots of resources given that we were at Stanford. Okay? And mainly it is good advisors. Explaining the medical device development process can be rather long, okay? And I'm happy to give you pointers, okay? But basically it's about identifying credible needs, asking if you can develop a good solution, okay? And then once you've developed a potential solution, there are some differences with between medical devices and most other product development processes, because medical device is actually geared around being safe, okay? And avoiding risk. Right? No one really gets hurt if Google search gives you the wrong answer. Okay? So whereas in a medical device situation that can happen. So a lot of development activities then so it can be relatively easy to come up with a functioning product. It's very difficult to come up with a safe and reliable product. Okay? And that's actually where the time goes in, development effort goes in. Okay? And once you think you've developed that, then you go into trials. Okay? Along the way, you need capital. Okay? Medical device development can be capital intensive, not necessarily, but can be. Okay? And then, of course, going to market is a whole other ballgame, okay? Because it's not, you're selling to, different markets is different, but in the Indian context, you're selling to doctors. Doctors often are in the beneficiaries. They're deciding on behalf of someone else. Okay? The economics is decided by the hospital frequently. Okay? And if it's a doctor-run hospital, then it's the doctor, but otherwise it isn't. Okay? So again, the gist of what I'm saying is, if you look at use, choose, and pay the dues. Okay? The person who uses, the person who chooses, and the person who pays the dues can be very different. And so that complicates the business case a little. Okay? All right. Now, what's our status here? No? Okay. All right. Let's take, yeah. Go ahead.
Excuse me. In your device, how you control the temperature with the water?
Okay. Can I make a request here? Just in general interest, I'll happy to answer this. I'll be happy to answer this question. But in general interest, okay, let me not get into the technicality of the device. I'm more than happy to answer technical questions about the Embrace device offline. Okay? But since that's not the intended purpose, I only happen to get that far in a talk that's actually a little longer. Since that's not the intended objective, okay, it would only be fair to the organizers that I avoid taking too many questions. Your question is how does it maintain temperature?
How you control the temperature for the baby?
How do you control the temperature? Yeah, so you don't actually have a closed loop control system here. It has no feedback, okay, and that's because you don't really need it. It's a physics-based system, okay, where thermal equilibrium is achieved when two temperatures are equal. If two temperatures are not equal, there will be heat flow, right, across a gradient. That's the system here. If the baby gets cold, since this is, think of that white mat that you saw. It is the phase change material. It's called the warm pack. The warm pack is like a thermal slab. Okay? It locks temperature at a certain, at 37 degrees Celsius. And so anything around it, it tries to bring to 37 from above or below. Right? Okay? All right. Good. Hopefully this lasts a little. Okay, great. So classification. Classification problems, classic example is image recognition. Okay. Now, this example I've shown here doesn't stop at recognition. It also actually generates a label, okay. Generates a descriptor. Okay. And these are dynamically generated, by the way, explaining the scene. So there's some language understanding going on here. Okay. This is also, by the way, a classification problem. Okay. It's not just about recognizing images. The classification problem being handled in generating these words is, what are the best words I should use to describe this image? What sequence of words, okay, will form grammatical sense, okay, which is also a classification problem. If you look at the space of AI, a vast majority of, a lot of advancements in the last 10 years have been around classification. And this is driven by a few factors. One is new technology. Okay, so we developed techniques to train what are called deep neural networks, and there was new theory that came out that allowed that. We had lots and lots of data, given the digital age, that allowed this. Okay? And the third thing that happened was GPUs, okay? Graphics processing units, that allowed heavy computation to happen. Computation of the sort that is used in AI. And if you're curious, a lot of AI computations are matrix vector multiplications. Okay? So since we have a lot of engineers here, and GPUs are very good at doing fast matrix vector multiplications. Okay? There are many other familiar problems you'll see in the realm of classification. Again, in the interest of time, maybe I shouldn't get into too many of those. Voice recognition is a classification problem. Okay? Pretty much any recognition problem is a classification problem. Given radiology images, okay, is there a tumor here or not? Okay. It's a classification problem. Okay. Given this image of the retina, does this patient have diabetic retinopathy or not? Okay. That's a classification problem, right? The second kind of problem where AI is quite useful for is prediction. Self-driving cars have a need for this. Okay? As I see another car coming, I need to predict, is it actually going to cross my path or not? What is it likely to do next? Okay? It's a slightly harder problem if you see a person coming. You have to predict what is this person likely to do? So there's many prediction problems to be handled here. Again, given a lot of data, this is something that can be done effectively. Advances in prediction in AI have been applied to many other fields. Classic immediate examples that will come to mind are the stock market, okay? Weather prediction, prediction of commodity prices. Right? Yeah, and there's few things that involve trending, pollution. Okay? So there's a slight difference. So there's lots of similarities between prediction and classification, by the way. Fundamentally, there are some fundamental similarities. Because both classification and prediction are decision-making problems. In classification, you're trying to make a decision of what is the most likely label to apply. Which class does this belong to? Is this a cat or a dog? Okay? That's a decision problem. Prediction is also a decision problem, which is the temperature tomorrow going to go up or go down? So in that way, classification and prediction are actually fundamentally linked. Difference being that typically prediction means that you're trying to predict data that is similar to your past. Okay? So what you're trying to predict is similar to what you have to train. Classification, you're trying to actually identify something that is different from the input. Your input might be an image, your output is a label of the image. It might be a word. Okay? So your input might be the image of a cat or a dog, the output will be the word cat or dog, for example. Both these fall into a category called supervised learning. okay, which is that you give it, it needs data to learn. It needs data to learn, and it's actually trained on lots and lots of examples. So that's why it's called supervised learning. There's another strategy called unsupervised learning, and that's used to identify optimal strategies. So maybe the most famous recent example of this is AlphaGo. Okay? So it uses something, identifying optimal strategies is done using something called reinforcement learning, okay? Which is you play lots of things, okay? And you're learning on the fly. You don't have all the data available because it's analyzing all possible solutions of Go is just too complicated. Okay? So you can't necessarily explore that way, so you have to learn strategies. And that's what's going on here. This is not necessarily a supervised problem either. Till the game is over, I don't know if I've won or lost. Okay? So along the way, I don't necessarily know what is a good position or a bad position. We may have some heuristics from what human beings have come up with, but that's not necessarily correct, right? So you don't have milestones along the way. That's why it's an unsupervised learning problem. Okay? In fact, it falls into a realm called, like I said, reinforcement learning. I'll pause there and say that the previous example I gave, the self-driving car, uses all three kinds of learning. Okay? It needs to be able to do classification to identify if this is a road or a sidewalk. It needs to be able to do prediction, like I said, to decide is that car going to cross my pathway or not. And it needs to identify optimal strategies, because as I drive, I have to figure out what is the best route to take. Routing is typically an optimal strategy problem. Okay? So I was just to suggest that some of these are not mutually exclusive. Many solutions require combinations of these. By the way, this issue of optimal strategies or reinforcement learning is also this might be the more popular example, okay? But the most effective example we know from the last decade is actually online advertising. Okay? Reinforcement learning is used to do optimal banner placement on websites, and it is the biggest success of reinforcement, practical success of reinforcement learning that we have. All right, so I'll pause there and maybe look at some opportunities that may be available for in this space. This is what I'd suggest, that and feel free to challenge me, okay? If it doesn't require creativity or empathy, you can algorithmize it. Okay, so let that sink in. If a task does not require creativity or empathy, you can automate it. Okay? And I use this classification not because creativity and empathy cannot be automated, it's just easier to agree that if it doesn't involve these, things can be automated, right? So I would encourage you to look for examples of situations where that is true. And you will see that there's a huge number of situations around us that require neither creativity nor empathy. So there's a few patterns you can look for. Okay? Look for repetitive tasks. Okay? Now these situations are rife for automation. They don't necessarily need AI, okay? Because AI means there has to be some sort of learning. Okay? There's a lot of repetitive tasks that don't need any learning, okay? But that are rife for automation. Tasks that may be unsafe are another category that are rife for automation, okay? And typically involve some degree of AI. Okay? What are examples? Okay? Inspecting unsafe areas, okay? Space missions. Okay? There's a reason we send robots to Mars as opposed to humans. It's a lot easier to do that. Okay? And you can find plenty of examples in the real world as well. In fact, safety is one of the biggest value props of the self-driving car. The next is low risk tolerance, okay, where you need to be highly certain that you won't be prone to human error. Okay. These are other areas where AI can be fairly powerful. if you have sufficient performance. In medical diagnosis, this is quickly getting there, by the way. Officially, there are many technologies that have reached a situation where they are more accurate than doctors. Okay? And why is that happening? Because if I have an algorithm that's learning from, say, standard example, algorithm has path lab images, and from that I have to identify disease case versus not. Okay? An algorithm will have access to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of images. Okay? No pathologist in his or her lifetime will ever see so many images. And secondly, the algorithm will not have all the classic human biases that exist. Okay? There's recall bias, confirmation bias. You just have to look at cognitive biases to see everything that a human being can be prone to. Okay? So algorithms are not prone to this, other than biases that we may accidentally program into them. And the next thing to look at is areas where there's lots of examples to learn from. Because that's been one clear advancement in AI. Look at situations where there's lots of data that I have, okay, that I can use for supervised learning to train my algorithm from. Okay. If I have access to tons of data, possibly there's something interesting I can do. There might be classification, there might be prediction that I can do. Okay. So look for situations where there might be tons and tons of examples that I have access to. As things stand, AI has not reached a level where it can learn from a few examples. It's an active area of research. Okay? There's some interesting work going on there, but it hasn't reached that stage where we can learn from few examples. Unlike human beings, where we have the ability to learn quickly from a few examples. Okay. I'll keep going and actually take questions in the end. This is another very useful way, a potentially useful way to look at things, okay, which is all problems in the world can be classified into two. Okay. There's only two kinds of problems. There's people problems and there's technology problems. Okay. So what do I mean by that? Detecting cancer is a technology problem. Okay. Living a life where I minimize the risk of cancer is a people problem, because there's a lot of behavioral issues involved. Okay. Pretty much all of sales is a people problem. Okay. Technology problems you're familiar with. Now, if you classify these this way, you can look at, well, if something is reducing cost can often be a technology problem, not necessarily. Sometimes it's a people problem. Okay. Okay. Because you can reduce cost through aggregated buying power and therefore better negotiating capability. Okay. And negotiation is again solving a people problem. Technology can be used to solve technology problems. Many people problems can be helped by technology. So for example, if I have a Fitbit, it actually helps me, it's a technology solution to help me lead a better life. So it can reduce cognitive load and decision making, right? So as you come across problems, try and classify this. This is a very useful exercise I'd recommend. Okay? And see, is there a technology problem or a people problem? And if it is a people problem, can technology alleviate it? Technology typically won't solve it, okay? But it can reduce the friction in the problem. Another useful question to ask is, and this is particularly true in the context that we live in, okay? In India, in a country with lots of opportunities. There are many things you can ask about, should this be happening? Okay. I'll give you an example, and this is potentially, actually, yeah, there's probably stuff here that can be done. When you have a delivery guy who needs to deliver to you, okay, often he'll call you and ask, oh, where should I come? How do I get there? Okay. Yes, you have Google Maps and you can share, you have location sharing and all of that. Still, frequently you'll get this question. This is one of the situations when you ask, should this be happening? Okay. I've heard, let's take a different domain. I've heard students complain about the quality of teachers. Okay. And you ask the question, today in a connected world where you have access to the best information from across the world, should this be happening? And the should this be happening is not about should there be bad teachers in today's world. Should we be dependent on teachers in today's world? Okay. So asking some of these fundamental questions can lead to basic opportunities, right? And there are many successful examples of companies that have asked this question. The next question you can ask is, if it should be happening, can it be done better? Right? And so this is a useful thing to keep in mind, that anything can be done better. Anything that you see around you can be done better. Right? I'm happy to, I'll be humbled if you give counter examples, okay? But I haven't come across these. Pretty much everything around us can be done better, okay? Unless they are mathematical proofs. Okay? As in, unless they prove that you're reaching the global optimum. Okay? I have to cover that base. All right, so I did pause around that whole space of, given that we're touching the broad topic of AI, it would be unfair if I did not touch upon this, which is machines that, I said, look at situations that do not require creativity and empathy. It's not necessarily because machines do not have creativity or empathy. You will easily see plenty of examples of this. It's an active area of work right now. This is actually, it's a painting that an AI did. Okay? No such image existed, and it's something that the AI conjured up. Okay? There are other examples of machine creativity. There are algorithms that actually design new circuits. Okay? It's an example of machine creativity. There are machines that actually design new machines. Okay? So if you're interested in the field, the thing to look for is generative design. Okay? Generative design is this field of machines that have creativity. It's one of the fields that look at machines having creativity. Empathy. Well, this is from Microsoft. The ability to a key part of empathy is the ability to recognize emotion. Right? Don't be surprised if this gets better. This will necessarily get better, because how do we typically read a person's emotions? Okay? Based on our experience of history, based on body language, okay? Language used, tone, okay? Facial cues. Okay? All of these are available to an algorithm, okay? To a machine. And more. A machine will be able to also see your pupil dilation. Okay? A machine will be able to see your breath rate. A machine, just by looking at you. Okay? And a machine will be able to also see your pulse rate by looking at the change in red value of the RGB in your face. There's a pulsing of the red value that happens every time your heart beats, by the way. There's some interesting work there as well. Okay. Maybe I'll stop using the slides. I'm pretty much done. This is my last slides. And the last slide basically says two cultures. I'll wrap up with that and take questions. The two cultures is actually, the phrase the two cultures was the name of a famous lecture given by C.P. Snow. Sir C.P. Snow, Charles P. Snow, in 1959 in Cambridge. And it was the two cultures he was referring to was the humanities and the sciences. And the challenge he posed, and this is why I was very encouraged to see a diversity of people here. The challenge he posed was this, that in the modern world, there is very little communication between these two main schools of thought, okay? The humanities and the sciences. And most interesting problems, most big problems in the world lie at the intersection of both of these. They lie at the intersection of people problems and technology problems. Right? And so the future is rich with opportunities, and there is a need for the two cultures to come together. Okay? And that's what I'd encourage you to do. Okay? Bring the two cultures together. There's plenty of opportunity out there. Thank you. I'm happy to take some questions. Yes.
So this topic, AI, has been around. A lot of people have been speaking, saying that it will be the future. My question for you is, we know that some of the great applications in the online world today runs on it, like the Google AdWords, How to Place, even the Google I/O, latest ones. When do you think will a real full-born physical application of AI will be in the normal use? What do you think will be the timeline? I mean, I'm talking about something like a smart cars. When do you think that will happen?
So, I think we're okay. Self-driving, so if you go to the Bay Area, you will find self-driving cars driving around all the time.
That's it, but it's still a very niche.
So this is a slightly tricky question to answer because the boundary is not clear. Okay, and this is a problem that AI has always had. As soon as it's done, it's typically said, "Oh well, yeah, that was easy to do. That's not real AI." So when Kasparov was beaten in chess, till then, oh, and a machine beating a human being in chess that will be like real AI needed. Once it was done, oh, that's a search and optimization problem. That's not real AI. Okay. Then image recognition now has reached accuracy of it has reached pretty much human accuracy, and in some situations exceeds human accuracy. Okay. And then you say, well, yeah, but you have lots and lots of data. This machine doesn't really understand what's in the image. It's only classifying. Okay. Fair criticism, yeah, sure. Okay. On the other hand, so it's a moving goalpost. That's one thing I want to flag with you. Your question is actually, when will you see physical manifestations of AI? Okay. So there's many that you already see around us. Okay. A lot of home automation devices, smart devices, actually use forms of AI. For example, the Amazon Alexa, the voice recognition technology involved, okay, is what has classically been an AI problem. Okay? And it uses deep neural networks to actually solve that. That is why you're able to have an Alexa today, and we weren't able to do that 10 years ago. Okay? It has required, I would say it's a very physical manifestation. Self-driving cars, they very much exist. The only thing stopping them from actually getting into the road is regulatory issues, right? And I'm not blaming that. We have to do things carefully, okay? But it's not necessarily a technology challenge that is stopping that. Okay? There's regulatory aspects, and then there are business side issues also of how these things will be monetized and all of that. Okay? The technology is there. In healthcare, there's plenty of technology that's reached a stage of being better than doctors. Okay? There's ethical questions to ask there. Okay? Because one problem that some of these AIs have is it's difficult to explain why they made certain decisions, because they learn from examples. They don't learn from rules. They learn from examples. Okay? So you don't necessarily really know the boundaries of classification. Again, this is an active area of work. So many of them lack explainability, and therefore there are challenges to actually deployment. Okay? And it's being done carefully. So it's not because the technology doesn't exist. Okay? There's some time needed in many cases for the technology to be accepted into society, okay, and integrated into our social systems. Okay? If your question is about when will we have robots that, with arms and legs that basically the Asimov world, okay? Robots with true intelligence, concept learning and generalizability and things like that, it's anyone's guess. Okay? But the general expectation is by the middle of the century. But I suspect that might be a little pessimistic. I suspect it will actually be sooner than that, and that is because in many, many cases, once these changes start happening, and this is true of what the class of technologies called exponential technologies. Once changes that start happening, okay, we human beings have the intuitional ability to understand exponential change. And some of these are exponential in nature for a very specific example. And because we have a fair number of engineers in here, I'll tell you actually why it's not a buzzword. Frequently it's used as a buzzword. Okay? But there's a reason some of these qualify for exponential technology, and it's this. The exponential function has a particular property, okay, which is the derivative of an exponential function, is proportional to the exponential, right? dy by dx is proportional to y. In some of these technologies, the more advanced your technology is, okay, the easier it is to develop new technology. Okay? Because as technology gets more advanced, you have better tools. Okay? And as you have better tools, your rate of growth of technology goes up. And so your dy by dx really is proportional to y there. And so that's why it follows an exponential pathway. Typically, it hits roadblocks. Most common case where it drops off is actually social acceptance. The next common reason is actually hitting some technology bottlenecks. And those technology bottlenecks are typically limits of physics that you hit. It's a slightly long answer to your question. There's a question back there. Yeah. Back there.
So, you coming from you talked
Little
about,
louder.
You talked about your idea on that baby incubation.
I can't hear you. Sorry, you'll have to.
So you talked about your idea, and the machine you created for babies, right?
Okay.
What
yeah.
made you lead to or lean towards the medical science, which is kind of untouched, and how do you see it connected with AI? Where do you see going forward, especially with the help of your device, how AI can be implemented, and what is the next
All right.
thing
So
coming up?
the common thread in my history is not technology. Okay, so I didn't go into it because it was a medical device and I had a background in anything medical. When I actually started doing this, I had no background in medical devices. Okay, I had no background dealing with babies. Okay, I was very much single. Okay, so it was not because it was a medical issue that we looked at it, and I can tell you why we did that. So one of the fun things about being at a university like Stanford is that you get to do lots of diverse things. Okay? So while I was doing my master's and then my PhD there, for 4 years I was paid by university to throw parties. I actually got a stipend to throw parties. Okay? I used to work at a subatomic particle accelerator there. I used to MC shows. Okay? Large shows, I used to MC them. I was part of the Stanford Religious Roundtable. So there's lots of fun things to do. And one of those fun things I did was go spend time at the design school at Stanford. Okay? I was curious, and I spent some time at the D school at Stanford, and it turned out to be very interesting because I realized that design thinking as it was being taught at Stanford was about, so typically in school, we're taught how to solve problems. In colleges, we're taught how to solve problems. No one tells us where to find the right problems to solve. Okay? We're never asked to set our own exam paper. I think that's slowly changing with project-based learning, but typically that hasn't been the case. A lot of design is about identifying the right problem to solve, not necessarily solving the problem right, but also solving the right problem. Okay? And it put people at the center of your problem-solving method. Okay? And using technology and business as a means of meeting people's needs. And that's why it was called human-centered design. Okay? So it was great fun. And Embrace happened to be our class project. Okay? So I had, at that point, me or my teammates in the class had no intention of starting any company. But at the end of the class, we had an interesting prototype. Okay? And we had also developed a business plan around that. Okay? And the class had a partner organization that came to us with a challenge. And this was an NGO from Nepal called Medicine Mondial. They basically wanted a cheaper incubator. Okay? And D-School being D-School encouraged us to actually zoom out, look at the problem, and that's where I saw the donated incubator and many other examples and realized that you can make cheaper incubators, cheaper glass boxes that plug in, but they're not going to make a big difference. Okay? They're just going to reach a few extra hospitals, but that's not where the babies are dying. Right? So we had to radically rethink things. That's where we came up with this, the initial idea for the solution. At the end of the class, the NGO from Nepal wasn't interested. They still wanted a cheaper glass box that plugs in, for whatever reason. Okay? And we realized, and this is something that you should also ask, what they thought was the need was actually a solution. Okay. They came to us with a need for a cheaper incubator. Okay. But a cheaper incubator is actually a solution. The real need is to actually save dying babies. Right? And sometimes, and this frequently happens, confusing needs and solutions. Okay. So we had come up with this, they were not interested in taking it forward. Meanwhile, we kept tinkering on the side, and we realized that we were onto something that has the potential to make a big difference. Okay. And we also realized that if we did not take it forward, no one else was going to. It would sit on a shelf, it will be a nice student project, and that'll be that. Okay. So at which point it was time to ask deeply personal questions for all of us. And I think the way I rationalized it to myself was, wait, these are some of the most important problems facing humanity. Reduction of infant mortality was a stated Millennium Development Goal by the UN. And what are we saying? So things like this actually should be left to people who don't have lucrative opportunities, right? Yeah, I could go and work for the Googles and Facebooks and Qualcomms and Intels. Okay. So the bigger problem should be left to people who don't have these opportunities. Something about that didn't add up. And so the way I framed this for myself was, if I had actually taken that traditional path, my degrees would have stood me in good stead, but I'd have failed my education. So made a choice to put all my belongings in 6 boxes, ship them to Bangalore, and I moved out here. That's a long answer to your question. Yeah, there's a question there. How are we on time? Okay, so this will be the last question. All right.
First of all, thank you to Seeding Kerala, because I'm in my 18 years of life outside India. First time I'm attending such a program, and big thanks to the organizers behind this a huge program like this.
Thank you for coming.
My concern is the stability or the ownership of these kind of ideas, because Seeding Kerala, I believe, it helps the people really get into the world, changing get into the world in a way, because they are, yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Yep.
Which is this a question for me or for the organizers?
It's for you, because you are
right.
talking a very interesting session, because maybe
right.
I can get some right
Sure.
info from your side.
Sure.
My concern is the stability or the position of the ideas, because Seeding Kerala, of these kind of campaigns, helping people to face the world, when they come with an idea, let it reach to the international market and all these things. My concern to you is because, for example, a couple of days back, there was a news come up, Yahoo has been taken over by Verizon. Because in my days, Yahoo Messenger or all these things were popular anything. Now, small organization or big organizations taken over because there was some.
So I'm having trouble understanding the question. Could you just frame the question?
Yeah, the stability is because some people's ideas, it is get into international market.
Okay.
Is it a healthy trend? Because because some these taker of these things, because Seeding Kerala will have hell number of ideas, huge ideas and all these things. When you come to international platform, the stability of keeping those ideas or is taking over of these things, is it a healthy trend? That's my question to you.
Ideas are useless if they don't get out into the world. Okay. Otherwise, ideas are as good as a candle under a pot. Right. So ideas matter to the world only if they're widely dispersed and people make use of them and they benefit people in some tangible way. Right. That would be my take. So in that sense, it's very healthy. I'll thank you again for the opportunity and appreciate the invite.
So before you step down, I would like to invite Anoop from. Yeah.
I'll be around at least till lunchtime. So feel free to come ask questions, chat about anything that you like. I'm available. All right.